This episode of Vintage Stormfront Freaks has been previously recorded. Jay Allen. Jay is a production director with CBS Radio and a transistor radio expert. So first and foremost, Jay, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Well, thank you very much.
You'll get no resistance from us, Jay. Electronics joke.
I get it. So, the point of having Jay on is this show is as we're nearing the holiday shopping season. This particular show, we're actually going to be talking about a number of different weather products, but specifically, obviously, weather radios are a big part of that. And so we wanted to have Jay on because he's got a big, long-standing history with transistor radios and such. But I guess first and foremost, Jay, give our listeners an idea of your background and how you became a transistor radio buff.
Well, I think I started out as a nerd, and that was because I really loved my transistor radio as a kid more than probably anything else. And, back in those days, in the late 50s and early 60s, transistor radios, everyone had them and everyone loved them, and they were things of beauty sometimes. And it was exciting to me to be able to listen to faraway stations at night that most people weren't aware even existed. And from there, it was a lifelong passion of getting better and better radios. And as an adult, I can now obtain radios I couldn't afford back then. And it's just been a lifelong hobby for me.
Wait a minute. 50s and 60s. I thought you were 39, Jay.
Yeah, just like Jack Benny. I was 39 about, let's say, 28 years ago.
Wow.
We're going to have to. Yeah, we'll have to for our Stormfront Freaks Raw. We'll have to have you on one of the breaks. Just quick walk us through your beautiful museum you have in your home of some of your radios, because you gave me a sneak peek of that, and that was great. Sure. So I guess let us know maybe a little bit of the history or evolution of weather radios, where, how the weather band, where did that start, and when did radio start to include that?
Yeah, well, basically, there were some bad tornadoes in 1965 in the Great Lakes area, and the National Weather Service decided they needed to find a better way to alert the public to impending severe weather. And they started a temporary service in the 60s, but around 1970, they developed something close to the current system, the NOAA weather band. And they started first with one frequency, 162.550 megahertz, but today there are 7 frequencies, all in that general area. And as early as the 70s, Radio Shack sold Weather Cube radios, which you could sit on your desk for $19.95. And they've been very affordable to this day. If you do a Google search right now for NOAA weather radio or weather radio, you can find workable radios beginning under $20. And it's an interesting thing. Now, I live in an inland area, and I'm, in Connecticut. We don't have a lot of severe weather, although we can have blizzards and severe storms. But in the summertime, I find weather radio is interesting just to know what the weather's going to be in more detail than I can get from, normal radio and TV stations. So I find it enjoyable, especially in the summer, to listen to the NOAA station for 15 minutes. Then I really know what's going on in my area.
15 minutes, that's impressive.
Well, they're computer-generated voices. Some are male, some are female. They have trouble pronouncing the local streets and towns sometimes. But basically, the information repeats, and depending on some stations repeat a loop as short as 5 minutes, some that cover wider areas. For instance, where I live, one of the stations I can receive covers Long Island Sound. Those loops can be 10, 12, or 15 minutes before you have heard all the information and it begins to repeat.
That's where the horoscope ends up in there too, right? The wave height is 6 feet.
Long Island Sound don't really affect me that much here in Hartford.
Waves are 6 feet, and if you're a Sagittarius.
And the other thing that's interesting about weather radio, there are a couple thousand of these stations around the country, and they generally have about a 40-mile radius, depending on your local terrain. But in my area, because I happen to be kind of at a high elevation, I'm near the top of a hill, I can receive 4 different NOAA weather stations, and they cover different areas. But interestingly, the one that covers my area is not the one that's closest to me, and it's a little bit difficult to receive. So that's kind of unusual.
Did Jay just say he's high on a hill? Is that what he said?
Whoa! I thought I heard that.
Hey, now.
So what are some of the features, Jay? Because obviously, when they first were produced, it was really just a radio that could receive the signal. What have you seen now over the years? Because I know you continue to keep up on radios. What have you noticed as far as features, and what do we see now?
Well, one thing I will say is that back in those days, other than the dedicated weather radios, such as that Radio Shack Weather Cube that I mentioned, there were a lot of multi-band radios that were, AM and shortwave, such as the Zenith transoceanic radios, which are very popular. And the later transistorized models of those covered the high frequency bands that encompass the NOAA weather frequencies and several other frequencies. But those radios were not very sensitive. The transoceanics that I have can barely receive the signals that come in like locals on modern radios. And that's because in those days, very high frequency reception like this was a little bit more difficult to obtain in a portable unit than it is today. The sophistication of electronics has improved, so now a $20 weather radio can receive better than my, let's say, 1968 Zenith transoceanic. And so, there were those multi-band radios. Sometime in the 80s or 90s, they began to get better reception. And today, it's interesting, I have probably 8 or 9 radios which happen to cover the weather band. I don't have any dedicated weather radios, but I have shortwave radios that include weather band, or AM radios that include weather band. And most of them receive pretty much identically. There's not a big difference in weather band reception. And the main feature that they have now is the alert function, which is really good if you're, on the water or in a, storm-prone area. If tornadoes are forecast and you want to have an early alert, these radios can be put into alert mode. And in that mode, the radio is not playing, it's silent, but it's actually listening for an emergency alert tone. And if one is sent, then the radio wakes up and alerts you. You can either have a siren or just have the audio. And that can be a real lifesaver, if you're in a really storm-prone area. The one thing that I would say is that there are a lot of battery-operated weather radios, but if you want to use the alert function, it's better to have one that plugs into external power, because in the alert mode, the radio is actually on and receiving 24/7, and it wouldn't take more than a day or two for your batteries to be depleted. So if you're going to want a radio that has the alert function and you're going to use it with any regularity, get a radio that uses external power in addition to batteries as a backup.
I also like the alert function because if you want to sleep and only be awakened if it's in your area, that's nice.
Yeah, true. Yeah, very true.
I had the old Radio Shack one from like 1980, and it went off for like every single thing,
All 20 counties in the area,
400 miles away.
So, Jay, how reliable are the radios? Is there ever a time where the interference might cause them to go out or something like that, or the signal might not get through? What are kind of those instances? Does that happen?
Well, I think you kind of have to get a feel for what the normal reception is like in your area. As I said earlier, I can receive several of the NOAA weather frequencies. There are 7 different frequencies, and I can receive 4, sometimes 5 of them. The one that I listen to most often is not a very strong signal, so some days it's a little bit clearer than others, but it's always there. And because it's a very high frequency, in 162 megahertz range FM signal, it's not bothered by atmospheric conditions as much as AM or shortwave would be. So they're generally fairly reliable. But if you have a very marginal signal, I guess I wouldn't feel as safe as if I had a stronger station near me. One thing I can also say is because the frequency is so high, again, they're from 162.4 megahertz up to 162.5 megahertz, whereas shortwave, for instance, ends at 30 megahertz. Sometimes you get better reception by shortening the whip antenna on the radio. If it's an FM radio or shortwave radio, you can have an antenna that extends to 3, 4, or 5 feet. But I found that sometimes something closer to 12 or 18 inches will actually improve the reception of the NOAA frequency, so you can experiment with that.
Okay.
What I guess when people are looking for a weather radio, let's say they're deciding, yeah, I need to get one, or I should get one for a family member or friend. I guess what are the different ones to look for?
Well, there are many major
features
brands
and such. Yeah.
There are very familiar brands such as Kaito, Kaito, USA. First Alert is one. Sanjin makes many. Midland is a variable company. They have some fairly cheap things, but they have some good ones too. And some of the catalog places like LL Bean will have some emergency radios, which usually have weather band. But generally, I guess I just avoid the very cheapest radios because the main differences in them is going to be the build quality, and you can just tell when you pick something up if it's really flimsy plastic or if it feels a little more solid. So I probably wouldn't buy that $17.99 ambient weather radio that I found on Amazon. But if you spend $20, $30, or $40 for an emergency radio or a desktop radio, it should be fine. Just learn it, use it, get the feel for it before you're in an emergency situation, and you'll have some confidence.
What do you think about the ones where you can actually, if you're out camping, you can do the crank and it generates, as you crank it, it generates its own battery power?
Emergency radios, I have several of those too. And, I think one of the prime values of those, well, the two main things about emergency radios are you could store one away for 10 years and know that it would be there when you needed it because you wouldn't have to worry about the batteries having gone dead or leaked after 10 years. And they can also charge a cell phone. So if you don't have the ability to charge a cell phone in any other way, if your power was out, that could be a really, a life-saving thing. In general, the so-called emergency radios, which are the hand crank solar radios, are very minimalist radios. If you buy any regular radio that costs, let's say, $40 or $50 or more, it's liable to be a better sounding radio, have better reception on the various bands, even though the weather band doesn't vary as much as AM and FM reception does on modern radios. So basically, I consider the emergency radios, really emergency devices, but they're seldom really fine radios. They're basic radios.
Do you live in an earthquake zone? That's what I'm just curious.
Not unless I fall out of bed. No, normally it's pretty quiet.
All right.
You live in a swing. I love your video is all moving, and I'm like, I'm getting nauseous.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is like a handheld phone. I don't have a camera, so.
Well, Jay, let's do this first and foremost before we move on. What's the best way if listeners have questions? Because obviously you're a breadth of information when it comes to not only weather radios but any kind of transistor, small personal radio. What's the best way if they have a question or want to get in touch with you that they can do that?
Well, you can email me through my website at radiojallen@gmail.com. That's JAYALLEN, radiojallen@gmail.com. And I invite you to go to my website too, which is radiojallen.com, and you can see the radios that I've reviewed, see some of my collection. You can ask me questions and get in touch with me that way.
Jay is a cool dude. I'll tell you, Jay Bigam's artistic work is inspired by landscapes, sky, water, ice, and especially of his home, Alberta. Now, in 2017, Jay actually worked with 6 storm chaser photographers and accompanied each of them on a chase. Now, post-chase, they chose a photograph that was iconic of that chase, and then he began to interpret each of these photographs on a large canvas. And I guess the rest is history at this point, Jay. I mean, you have to go to his website and check this out. Some incredible work. And Jay, how did you get to where you wanted to go out with chasers and do this? I guess is the first question.
Well, I got interested. I had a guy named Miles McIntosh, who's actually worked at Environment Canada here in Edmonton. And I met him at a show, and he said, "Your art reminds me of the math of the weather." And I said, "What?" So
drinking?
It was a super slow show, so we spent about an hour talking about it. And Miles' actually specialty is upper atmosphere moisture, and he said, you really should think about developing this. So in I guess October of 2016, ChaserCon Canada was in Edmonton here where I am. And so I decided just on a whim I should go and just check it out. I'd followed a few storm chasers from Alberta, and I knew they were going to be at the ChaserCon. So I went, and it was pretty amazing. Reed Timmer was the keynote speaker.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, anyone who's ever seen Reed do a keynote, it's pretty exciting stuff. And at that time, I actually just did some sketches, and then I came home and thought about it. But the key thing was a guy named Jeff Wallace came up to me at the ChaserCon and said, if you really want to paint storms, you have to go out. You gotta experience the wind, the rain, all of the stuff. And he was absolutely right. So
they had you stand in the hail, didn't they?
No, actually. So what happened was I came home and I did a couple of sort of test pieces based on what I'd done at the sketches at the ChaserCon. And then I just sent out emails and Twitter direct messages to people and said, hey, do you want to be part of this project? I think I sent about 8 or 9, and I had immediately 6 people that said.
How'd you pick them, Jay? That's one of the things I was curious about.
I knew them.
Okay.
It was, I had, like I said, I'd followed a few on Twitter. I met some at ChaserCon. So and just sort of that chaser network of people. Once you know someone in the community, you follow them and they follow, and it sort of grows like that.
So you said that, I forget, who was it? Reed who said that it looks like a math equation? Is that who?
No, that was Miles at Environment Canada.
So what equation do you have behind you right now?
Actually, the piece behind me is from a photo I took at my son's wedding rehearsal out at Buffalo Lake, Alberta. It was an outdoor event, and the rehearsal, we had an incredible thunderstorm move through across the lake. Either side of the storm was grapefruit-sized hail, and it split right over top of us. We got some rain, but the giant 120-person tent was not destroyed. So I figured I had to immortalize that.
Yes.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
I know. I want you to come to my wedding, and just like paint and do something. That's amazing.
Keep the hail away.
So what inspired, your take and just, on the weather and how you actually manifest it into a painting and make it art?
Well, for years, I mean, I've always been interested in severe weather. My grandparents had a place a couple hours south of us, and we're right in what we call Hail Alley. It comes from the Rockies up sort of northeast, and always lots of storms. So lots of lightning to watch when I was a kid. And then, of course, in 1987, we had the Black Friday tornado here in Edmonton, which was an F4.
Yeah.
It was, I have a note here because it's pretty crazy. It was an F4, 19-mile long destruction path, almost a mile wide, killed 27 people, injured more than 300. The craziest thing about it, there's a photo, and maybe I can pass it on to you, but we have several oil refineries here, and the tornado actually flipped a giant, it was empty, but it was one of those huge oil storage tanks.
Wow.
Literally flipped it right upside down.
God, that's crazy.
And then the other thing is my parents bought a place at Buffalo Lake, which is in central Alberta, in 1998. And so I've spent summers, winters, all seasons there, and they have the most amazing sunsets and clouds and storms. So I really started to develop an interest in doing the sky, because we have great skies in Alberta. It's pretty flat and really lovely. And so I just started to paint. In 2013, I really started on this new journey about painting skies. And my skies were somewhat abstract. Swoopy is what a lot of people call them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's good.
so over the last 6 years, it's really developed. But I have to say that ChaserCon was completely transformative. It completely changed the way I looked at the weather. I've actually become a storm chaser now.
Oh, wow.
Gone out. In fact, this year I went out without any help, not even identifying where to go, and I managed to find some really good storms.
Wow,
so
good for you.
So that whole being there, feeling inflow, just all that amazing stuff, and yet to have been caught in a hail core, so knock on wood.
I'd like to see that one. I mean, not you being in it, but I mean the picture. Are you in the middle of a project now, or what's your next one that you're working on? Do you know?
Actually, I'm just painting storms. I really the sort of the official Turbulent Skies project was do the 6 pieces, have a show. And what I did with the show was each of the photos was blown up and put beside the painting that I did. The paintings were 44 by 60 inches, so they were fairly large. And I had the 6 photos blown up to a smaller size, but still there.
Were those feet or inches?
Inches, yeah.
Okay, that could be huge, 44
4
feet.
foot by 5 foot.
Come on, man.
Well, could have been a huge mural. I'd like to see one of those as a mural.
I'll do one if someone wants to hire me to do one. I'll absolutely do it.
What are we talking, Jay? How much?
Yeah, we'll talk after the show.
That's a lot. I can tell.
It is a lot. And then I actually posted the chase log. I did a chase blog for each of the chases and talked about what went right, what went wrong, how we did it. And then there's some photos that I took from the individual chases. So that's kind of how that project went. And now that it's sort of officially over, I'm just painting storms.
Jay, what's that website? What's the website where you've got the blog and videos and photos of and the paintings?
That's turbulentskies.ca.
Nice.
And then actually my main website, which has all of my work, is earthskyart.ca.
Okay.
Nice. So how long does it take you to complete an entire painting?
Well, I'm getting faster at it, but the 6 pieces that I did for the project took about a year.
Wow.
It's about 120, 140 hours in each, and I have a day job, so it's sort of after work and weekends and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, those are truly masterful pieces of art. Like you don't find that anywhere.
Well, thank you. The one thing that I really think that's important about it is that whenever I show these pieces, I get a lot of interest from people about weather. It's like it's almost like a science communications kind of thing where people say, well, why does it look like that? And I actually have studied a fair amount over the last couple of years. So, I mean, I'm certainly still an amateur, but I have the ability to say, well, that's a shelf cloud or whatever, and this is what causes that, and all those kinds of things. So
I'm loving that tornado on your Earth Sky art. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That one there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, hang on. I got to get back to you.
In the background there?
I lost it.
Yeah.
Hold on.
That's
yes, that
amazing.
one. Yes.
There we go. Yeah.
That's cool.
That's actually based on a video of a screen capture of a video that's on YouTube. You can find it. It's called Outlook 2014 Outlook Tornado 2014 or something like that.
Mm.
And the thing I like about it is the little tendrils that
Yeah.
show up
Uh-huh.
at the top, sort
Yes.
of above the funnel, and it those kinds of things really appeal to me.
I think you captured the beauty and the evilness of it. That's what I see.
Yeah.
I feel like there's both. And I think that's just incredible because I think storm chasers go out there and they see both. And I feel like you've really captured that in your painting.
One of the things I really try to do is to convey the motion of a storm, which is hard to do in a single image. And I also like to play with the color because depending on the storm, can be a little bit flat. If there's lots of rain or something, it's quite gray. So I like to push all of the colors and give it just a tweak to say this is kind of what it was like to be there.
I love that.
Jay, what's the future? So you said the project's over. You said you're still continuing to do storm art. What's the future? You're going to keep doing that, or where are you
Until I
going?
don't like storms anymore, which
Okay. Well, if you're
Will never
chasing now,
happen.
hopefully that'll stick around for a while.
Yes.
yeah, actually, there's a few things. I was talking with one of my storm chaser friends, and we might do a interesting little collaborative project over the summer.
Cool.
And just hopefully get out when this year was actually a decent year for storms. 2018 was a complete bust because of fires. So, but it was a good year this year, and hopefully we'll get a good one next year.
And do you mainly chase in Canada, or do you come down to the US and the plains?
So far, just in Canada, just in Alberta, pretty much so far.
Okay, nice.
But
So,
would be nice to
Jay,
get
question
down.
for you is now here's what everybody's going to want to know, and especially with the holiday season coming up, where can they buy these prints, and what kind of ways can they buy them? How much are they running? If you can give us an idea on that.
The project website, as I said, is turbulentskies.ca, and it's got links to my main website, which has my store, which is earthskyart.ca. And I have canvas prints, paper prints, and the originals available as well. The paper prints start at $40 and go up to $75 for limited editions, and canvas prints are more than that, but they're still pretty reasonable.
Which one is this? And I'm holding up right now with the tornado with the funnel cloud.
That one is actually a photo, or based on a photo by Beth Allen, who was on the show a year ago.
She was in our Women in Chasing show. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
I see her hair.
That was actually in float. I was in a tornado, but
so this one, just so you know, Jay, this one is now going to be on every episode of Stormfront Freaks podcast because it's going to go behind me.
Sweet.
On the show. But then
Awesome.
this is the one that I think is. Hold on.
Wait.
Yeah, that's right. Is this the one that's behind you? No, this is a different one.
No,
That's
a different
wow.
one. Yeah, that's actually based on a photo by another one of my project photographers, Chris Ratzlaff from Calgary. He's an amazing photographer, chaser, and time-lapse guy.
Which I can tell this baby's a wall cloud because of how deep and low it is.
Yeah, it's just a
supercell,
and he's
yeah.
actually, like many of the things that I've done with Chris's photography, that's actually based on a time lapse that he did, and it was just
nice,
absolutely stunning.
So that's the one that I just showed. That's the one that we're actually going to give away to somebody during our 4 weeks of Christmas. That's a print that someone's going to win that baby. That's why you got to follow us. But I'm telling you guys right now, you've got to go check out Jay's websites and see all the different, because again, you're not going to really get this even on a video podcast, let alone an audio podcast, be able to really understand what he's doing. So we'll put together some great show notes, but go to those websites. And Jay, how can people follow you on social media? What are your links there?
I'm on Jay is Painting on pretty much everything, and the Turbulent Skies. My Jay is Painting account might be a little sweary sometimes because it's I do a little bit of politics.
I like it, man. Go ahead.
All right.
Earmuffs for social media. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but the Turbulent Skies account is Turbulent_Skies on Twitter, and it's just plain old Turbulent Skies on Instagram.
And it's Canadian politics, right?
Yeah.
It's not nearly as exciting as what we.
And
what we've got
honestly,
here.
Alberta politics is about as messed up as U.S. politics
Really?
right now. So-
Wow.
Man,
Wow.
misery
Wow.
sometimes
World.
loves company.
Thank you for tuning in to the Stormfront Freaks podcast. You can watch our bi-weekly show live on youtube.com/stormfrontfreaks and download the audio version on your favorite podcast player. For links to our Patreon team of exclusive benefits, show notes, past shows, new videos, merchandise, and more, visit our website at stormfrontfreaks.com. While you're there, check out our interactive chaser radar from our friends at zoomradar.com. If you'd like to contact us with questions or make comments about the show, shoot us an email to questions@stormfrontfreaks.com or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. Search for Stormfront Freaks. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time and tell a friend about the Stormfront Freaks podcast.